Football for Kids podcast with me, Darren Rees. In this episode, we're going to be talking about the truly magnificent Brazil, Real Madrid and Manchester United player Casemiro. Before we do that, and before we get into your shout-outs, your messages and your Apple Podcast reviews, I need to tell you that there's very soon going to be another episode on Patreon for you super listeners. And that episode coming out in the next 2 to 3 days is going to be on one of England's tallest ever players, and a magnificent player too. The man who did the robot when he scored goals. The man who is absolutely hilarious. And that is the fantastic, the wonderful Peter Crouch. If you're already a super listener, thank you so very much for supporting the podcast. And if you want to get access to episodes on Manchester City, Gary Neville, Jesse Lingard, Luka Modric, a football quiz, and very soon Peter Crouch, you can click on the link in the description of this episode. So then, let's get into your shout-outs and your messages, shall we? The first one says, Dear Darren, can you do an episode on Seamus Coleman, as played for Silgo Rovers, our local team? Hopefully I've got that right. I've probably completely butchered the pronunciation, but I did give it a good go. Please can you do an episode on Eric Cantona as well, as we love Manchester United? And can you give a shout-out to my friend Adam? And that is from Alfie. Well, Alfie, thank you very much for your message, and thank you so much for being a listener. Massive shout out to you, all of your friends and family who love their football. And don't you worry, Eric Cantona is on my very long list of episodes, which I definitely need to write in the not so distant future. And the next one says, Dear Darren, it's Samuel here. I love your podcast. I think Portsmouth are a very good team. I support Manchester United. Blimey, that's 2 Manchester United fans in a row. And I think they are one of the best teams in the Premier League. My favourite player is Marcus Rashford. My dad is a podcast maker and he thinks yours is really good. He also supports AFC Bournemouth. Can you do a podcast on Manchester United and their history? Keep up the great work. And that is from Samuel, aged 8, who finishes his message with a massive, with a humongous, with an almighty 2! You lot have got to lay off a Suze. I'm getting exhausted doing these. Well, Samuel, thank you very much for your message. Thank you for being a listener. And don't you worry, Manchester United and the history of that club is also on the very long list of episodes which I need to write. I'm sure that will be a good one. What a club. Loads of history, loads of goals, loads of great players. We will get round to that one in the not so distant future. The next one says, Hi Darren, my name is Thomas. I'm from England and I support Liverpool. Please can you do an episode on Steven Gerrard and one on Mo Salah? And that one is from Thomas. Well, Thomas, thank you very much for your message. Thank you for being a listener. Hopefully you've had a chance to listen to the episode on the mighty Mo Salah, and Steven Gerrard is another one on the long list. And now you can see how long it is because there's so many episodes which I haven't written yet, but that's also a good thing because it means the Football for Kids podcast has got some time left in it yet. Right, before we get into this episode, I want to say a huge thank you to everybody who's followed the podcast on Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And if you haven't, please do it right now. And also a massive shout out to everyone who's been replying to the episodes on Spotify and giving the podcast 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts. And there's been a couple of new ones recently. And the first one says, this guy is great, 5 stars. And it's from Super Bricks Robin. Hi, I'm Robin, and I play football for Birchwood Juniors, and I'm a defender, and Ramos is my favourite player. So please can you do an episode on this legend? And the next one says, love this podcast, 5 stars. Hi Darren, my name's Orin and I'm 11 years old. I love your podcast and I listen to it every single night before bed. I'm always waiting for another podcast as I'm pretty sure I've listened to them all. Please can you do an episode about the start of football? Thanks and keep up the great content. And loving that everyone is finishing their episodes with Sue. However, it does get me out of breath when you do them really, really long. Right then, that's enough of the Apple Podcast reviews, the shout-outs and the messages. It's time to get into the episode about the fantastic, about the magnificent, about the brilliant Casemiro. Carlos Enrique Casemiro was born in Brazil in February in 1992. Casemiro was brought up by his mother, along with his brother and his sister. His mum was a single parent and a hard-working cleaner who had an amazing work ethic, something which Casemiro has most likely inherited from his mother. Like many Brazilians, Casemiro took to football like a duck to water. His first ever football club was a club called Sao Paulo. There's a story about how he ended up playing for the club, and it started with a trial that had over 300 kids that attended. Not that many would be likely to make it through, so he needed to stand out, and he needed to play it smart. Casemiro was 11 years old when he went for his trial with the club, and naturally, he was a striker. But, and there's a big but, he knew that being a striker was easily the most popular position, and that if he only went in to try and be a striker, it would massively decrease his chances of getting into the team. The coaches gathered up the 300 or so trialists and said, "Who here's a striker then?" And about 60 or 70 hands went up. Casemiro kept his hand down. He was smart. The coaches went through the different positions, working their way back from the most popular positions until they got to, "Who here is a defensive midfielder?" Casemiro put his hand up and shouted, "Me! I am." It was him and around 8 others who did the same thing. Rather than being the one to stand out in front of 60 or 70 other people at the trial, Casemiro was set to stand out in a group of 7 or 8 instead. This proved how intelligent and how smart he was at such a young age. It's funny really, because that smart move got him noticed, and it got him the position in the team, and he still plays in that position now. And, to be fair, he's probably one of the best defensive midfielders on the planet, if not the best defensive midfielder on the planet. Casemiro stayed with that club for 10 years and was also the captain for the club, showing clear leadership qualities from a young age. In 2009, he played in his first major football tournament at just 16 years old, as he played in the Under-17s World Cup in Nigeria. Brazil didn't get too far in that tournament, but nevertheless, it's all very valuable experience and something which did Casemiro good. A few years later, Casemiro got loaned out to Real Madrid's reserve team. He played a series of games for the reserves, showing his ridiculous talent, his 110% attitude and his competitive nature. Casemiro then spent some time floating between the Real Madrid reserves and then being loaned out to the Portuguese team Porto. Then, in 2015, he became a permanent first-team player for the dominating Real Madrid side. When Casemiro became a first-team player, he was working under the talented Real Madrid legend Zinedine Zidane. This was super special for him, as when he was growing up, Zinedine Zidane was his hero, a player whom he admired, and even to this day when he speaks to him, he gets nervous. It just goes to show that with hard work, determination and a never giving up attitude, that almost anything is possible. So, take note of that. Casemiro was hugely successful under the guidance of Zinedine Zidane, and what he achieved with Madrid is simply outstanding. He played alongside some of the greatest Madrid players of the modern era, including the wonderful Luka Modric. He played with Cristiano Ronaldo, Gareth Bale, Benzema, and so many others. In his first proper season as a first-team player, he and his teammates made it to the Champions League final, where they would play their rivals, Atletico Madrid. A game which would go 120 minutes. A game which Casemiro would play all 120 minutes. And Real Madrid would go on to win it on penalties. Casemiro lifted his first ever Champions League trophy. Casemiro and his teammates didn't just win that Champions League final though, they ended up winning the 2 following years as well, and again in 2022. Before his time was up at the club, Casemiro had bagged himself 4 Champions League winners' medals, 3 La Liga titles and a Copa del Rey. He will undoubtedly go down as one of the greatest Madrid players and one of the most successful Madrid players of all time. In August 2022, it's reported that Casemiro was brought from Madrid by Manchester United for, wait for it, £60 million. Before he joined the club, he was adamant that he was going to turn him around and be a part of making Manchester United a success again. In his first season of the Premier League, he made 28 appearances and has been treating every single game like it's his last one on earth. He's given every pass, every shot and every tackle 100%. However, his brutal tackling has caused him to miss quite a few games, and the referee has had to book him a fair amount. In the 2022-2023 season, Casemiro ended up getting 7 yellow cards, 2 red cards and giving away 48 free kicks. He might need to ease up a little bit. The Manchester United fans and the Manchester United manager Erik ten Hag love him though. He's seriously strong and amazing at what he does and has most definitely made a difference to the squad, as Manchester United look to have had their best season for a very long time. One thing's for sure, it'll be interesting to see how Casemiro adapts to his second season in the Premier League and to see if he can stay in the referee's good books this time. Not only has Casemiro been a successful and incredible club player, but he has represented his country of Brazil for 13 years and is a Copa America winner. So, I hope that you've enjoyed listening and learning about the tremendous Casemiro and all of his successes so far. Without doubt, we're going to have to do a part 2 in a couple of years' time. So remember, if you know someone who loves football just as much as you do, then please tell them about Football for Kids. And whether you're playing football soon, watching it on the telly or pitchside, I hope that you enjoy the game. See you next time.